founder, Philip Bahoshy. Philip, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us for a discussion about how to build a stellar advisory board for early stage startups. Before I let you kick off the webinar, I wanted to quickly remind everyone to please interact and engage with us following our handle at TechWadi.org, and to use the hashtag TWWebinar for any tweets or questions you might have. Philip will be holding a Q&A session following his presentation. Before I kick it off to you, Philip, I just wanted to provide a little more of your professional background. Philip is the founder and CEO of MAGNiTT, an online community that connects MENA entrepreneurs with stakeholders across the MENA ecosystem. Philip obtained his MBA from INSEAD in 2013 and a BSc in economics from the London School of Economics. During his time in Dubai, Philip worked for Oliver Wyman in the financial services practice for 3 years, followed by nearly 3 years at Barclays Wealth, working as chief of staff to the CEO, advising on strategic initiatives. Philip is now based in Dubai. I wanted to thank you once again for joining us today and for allowing me to introduce you. Feel free to kick off the presentation whenever.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Thank you everyone for having me. It's a great pleasure to be a part of this. I'm a big fan of what TechWadi is doing. Just by way of introduction, MAGNiTT is trying to help bring the whole of the ecosystem online. And through that journey of the last 2 years, where we've brought all of the startups and all the different protagonists, I've had a lot of time to speak to many of the founders, to many of the investors, corporates, and government officials. And one of the things that presentation, one second. One of the things that I say all the time is that in the region, it's very different to the likes of Silicon Valley and Europe. Many of the startup founders struggle in isolation within what's becoming an extremely cluttered ecosystem. And what we're trying to help do ourselves is connect the startups and their founders to the different protagonists in that space, whether they be investors, government, conferences, consumers, and the likes. But during that journey, especially at the early stage of being a startup, it can be very isolating, especially for sole founders. I'm a sole founder. Even if you have a co-founder, sometimes it's challenging just to get the right people to seek advice, support, and introductions on your journey. That we brought out in the report that we did was that 47% of registered startups on MAGNiTT are looking for $250,000 in funding. That's angel stage funding, early stage funding. That's not VC funding. And people that can help guide you with your pitch, your approach, and connections to angels would better help facilitate what it is that you're doing. Interestingly, through the platform, we've also found a whole different series of information. For instance, 49% of founders are looking for marketing help, 25% are looking for legal support, and 22% are looking for IT support, all of which are either service providers or industry experts that can help them with what it is that they're doing. Separately, it's interesting to note that 51% of startups on the platform are looking for mentorship. So what I'm going to try and explain is that I believe that a board of advisors is an underutilized tool here in the MENA region. It's something that can be extremely powerful, that has personally helped guide me and my startup with the people around me to help grow the proposition. And it's an extremely powerful tool to further grow your startup. To start with, I just want to try and explain what I mean by an advisory board. I've given the definition here. It's a formal group of mentors. I was recently on a panel and people were debating what's the need for advisors versus having mentors. Shouldn't you just have people that can help support what it is that you're doing? And ultimately, advisors provide individual and collective expertise to give you advice, introduce you to contacts, and tell you when you're making a mistake. One of the most important things, though, is that it is not a board of directors. They do not have fiduciary, legal, and business responsibilities. Their goal is effectively to help support you, give you advice, be someone to go to in terms of assistance, but they are not running a business the same way a board of directors does, which includes the right to firing a CEO. Now, why is that important? Because early stage startups don't need a board of directors. They're too early in their definition. They haven't had external funding. They haven't not necessarily had external parties involved with their business, but they still need people that can help guide them with what it is that they're doing. And hence they're advisors. That comes down in the contract that I'll later discuss. How can an advisory board be useful for you? Well, there's different areas that I want to highlight that they can be useful. Number one, they can bring expertise. Now, the most important to think about in expertise is that usually it's to strengthen your weakest links. There's no point bringing somebody, if you're in food and beverage, who's a food and beverage expert, if that's something that you're strong in. But maybe there's a marketing expert, a legal expert, somebody that can help you with investment that helps strengthen the weakest areas of your business proposition. The second thing is, although they're not out of director, just the fact that you have a group of people that you need to go back to give feedback on what it is that you're doing can help you have accountability. If you do it structurally, you can set targets, they can challenge you, they can actually tell you whether you're doing something right or wrong, but that accountability can only help drive what it is that you're doing as a proposition. Credibility. If you're able to correctly choose the right mentors and the right advisors to your proposition, if they're industry experts or people that pioneers in their field, that will only further enhance your proposition. And imagine when it comes to that pitch deck slide where you have your board of advisors on your pitch deck, that's something that will be extremely powerful when you have a bunch of logos explaining what each one of those people do. And number four, loneliness. I think all of us can sympathize with being a startup can be extremely lonely, challenging. The highs are high, the lows are low. Having a co-founder can be great, and having an early stage team is something that's extremely useful. But it's also great to have a group of people that once every month can give you a little bit of a sense check as to what it is that you're doing. Tell you whether you're doing something right, something wrong, tell you that you're on the right path, tell you that they've seen it before. So that really helps alleviate part of the loneliness. How to find and select an advisory board? Well, there's really no secret formula to how this is done. But there are a couple of key things that you should be looking for. You should be looking for people who are extremely passionate about what it is that they're doing and what your proposition provides. There's no point going to people who just want to help you out because they think it's good for their LinkedIn or their CV. You need someone that will challenge you, someone that lives and breathes what it is that you're doing and feels that you're actually onto something. I'll come on to my board of advisors on a later slide, but one of the things that was quite interesting when I formulated my board was that each person on my board at one point said, if you weren't doing, I would have liked to have done it myself. Or if you weren't doing it, I wish somebody was doing it myself. And that meant that they were vastly interested in what it is that I was doing. The second thing is the knowledge gaps. I alluded to that on the first slide. There's genuinely no point in having people who will do exactly what you already know. If you can find and identify your weakest links, bring people that will help strengthen that. If you're in transport, there may be somebody that can help you with the regulators. If you're in fashion, there may be somebody that can help you with finance. The final one, it's better to have people who are opinionated, people who are yes men. The last thing you need when you bring people and give them something in return are people that will just pander and tell you that you're doing something right. Challenge you, challenge the norm, and tell you how you need to drive and change that proposition. What I recommend, and people will debate whether 3, 2, 7 is the right number, is that you have 4 to 5 advisors maximum, each of which brings a different quality to the table. And I'll come on to terms, but each of which is agreed on the same terms. Pull out the slide in a second of my board of directors. I think it's on another pitch deck. But basically, I have 5 people. One is somebody who's focused on the VC world, Christos Mastoras, who's in INSEAD Partners. One person, Sharif Al-Badawi, who's on TechWadi, who's going to help me with the growth in Silicon Valley perspective, from a product perspective. I have Sarah Alamzadeh, who's the CEO of Designer24, who was an entrepreneur herself and was looking to move into this, looking for someone to help grow, and I wanted an entrepreneur's perspective. I had JJ De La Torre, who works at IBM, who really helped formulate the corporate proposition that we were trying to drive. And finally, Steve Haley, who had a lot of experience in community building. Each of those people had something different that they were able to offer. But I'll come on to how to utilize them best. But not only are they all useful individually, but more importantly, they're even more powerful when I get them on a call and get them to debate. One of the things that I always tell entrepreneurs, it's an excellent talent to be able to listen and not debate. Being able to just listen to some people debate your problem for you can be extremely gratifying. You don't only need to be defensive to defend what it is that you're doing. Now, the most important question is, how do you actually incentivize these people? One thing I've seen here in the region is people that are not very comfortable giving up equity. And I can understand that it's a very emotive process. But I have to say that to be able to get the best value out of a so-called mentor is to be able to say that they have skin in the game. I was on a panel once and they said, no, I don't believe that mentors should be given anything in return. My challenge to that is, if you come up with a structure by which you give them equity in return for what I'm going to come on to explain, they have to be held accountable. If they are not holding up their side of the bargain, then they don't get the equity. But if they're turning up, they're giving you the effort, they're giving you the introductions, they're giving you the support, they need to be given something in return. And the way that I put it is that you have the following three levers. You have the percentage of equity that you're ready to give them in your company. You're a very early stage company. You're not looking at huge amounts. I'll come on to the three different websites that you can find, and there's a lot of information online as to what range of percentage you should give. But commonly it's around 0.5 to 1% of equity to each of the advisors. That needs to be then balanced against how much time they're going to spend. That is either in one-off conversations, group conversations, or using their time to either make introductions or go with you to additional meetings. That can be structured in whatever way you like. But the way I look at it is that you have the two levers. The more equity you give, the more time you can expect in return. The lower the amount of equity, the lower amount of time that you should be expecting for them to be able to provide you. And ultimately, all of that is hedged against a vesting period. You are not giving them equity up front. It is usually for equity against time spent. So if they spend X amount of equity for 2 years, you can vest it monthly, you can provide a cliff, you can provide it every 6 monthly. But the point being, they need to uphold their part of the bargain to be able to get the equity. And I've given some links here, which I'm happy to share in the presentation afterwards, which are online sites which give recommendations and templates for agreements with the Board of Advisors. The last thing I want to mention before going into Q&A is how best to use these people. This is really where you get the true value. I have to admit that I'm come from a consulting background, which is extremely structured in the way that I've operated. And I think that at all times over the last year and 2 months that I've been with the Board of Directors, there have been several times where they will actually had a lot of value in actually just being part of the conversation. The most important one for me is, number one, there needs to be structure. You need to be able to use the opportunity of having an advisory board to structure not only your thoughts, but the proposition with them. Commitment to a time frame is important. Commitment to having a structure to the way that you approach things is important. And that leads to having a certain dashboard. Having a dashboard, set KPIs, creating a single slide which says number of users, number of revenue, number of client acquisitions, whatever it is specific to your business, saves you a lot of time at the beginning of each conversation. If you're structured in being able to use that data once a month, at the beginning of the month, everyone will know where you were, where you've got to, and where they expect you to go. But the most important thing is when you come onto the agenda and group calls, that's sent out beforehand. You don't need to spend the time that you've given them for equity talking about the numbers. They have that. The third one is the agenda. It's very important to stick to an agenda if you have a limited amount of time with any given advisor. What I always suggest is have a very quick introduction and choose 3 discussion points that you would like their advice on. The point is, again, not for you to defend yourself, it's for you to seek their advice. And you get more value in collectively getting their advice than you having to defend each point. And I mention here, listen. The feedback is there for you to listen to. Ultimately, you are the CEO or you are the founding team. It's for you to make the decision to drive your company. But they're there to be a sounding board. They're there to give their opinion on what it is that they can help you with. The number 5 that I put here is group calls. There's a lot of debate here as to whether it's better to have one-on-one conversations, whether it's better to have two and one. I found it extremely useful, and I believe that the advisors have also found it extremely useful, having group calls. Now, there's a number of reasons. Number one, it's always good to get different opinions, especially if they have them. Number two, if one person thinks of something that the other person hadn't thought of, that might drive an additional idea and a whole different conversation that may not have happened if you have them in solitude. But I'm going to match that by saying it's just as important to have one-on-ones. There are some conversations that you may just not be comfortable having with certain individuals within a group environment that you may just want to have. And most importantly, sometimes you can get too bogged down in the detail with one advisor that may be help on the product, or maybe helping you on the finance, and maybe helping you on the marketing, that may not be relevant to the other advisors that you want to spend time one-on-one with, rather than having it collectively. But the important thing is to try and balance a strategic group call with all of them collectively, with detailed one-on-one calls with the experts in whatever field it is that you're looking for. That's how I've gone about trying to do this. I found that it's been extremely helpful. To give you a couple of anecdotes through this that I've had, I've been told off a number of times by my board of advisors, and they'll laugh if they're listening, on ways that I've acted with others, maybe ways I've kind of approached business decisions. And they've always said it's better to come and have a view of that opinion internally than doing it externally. Benefits that they provided have been introductions. If you can have a warm introduction, whether it be for an investment purpose or whether it's for a lead, a corporate lead, that has a lot more value to it than coming cold. And of course, if it's someone that comes from the industry that you're working in, that will be extremely useful in the conversation. Other examples have just been product. Many times when I'm launching a new feature on the website, I will send it to them 1 week in advance of us actually launching it to say, guys, do you have anything that sticks out to you that is missing, something that needs to be changed, something that needs to be improved? And everyone on my board has given me invaluable advice whenever it is that I've asked them for it. However, one thing I've been very conscious about is their time is limited. Don't go to them with day-to-day decision makings. Don't go to them with silly questions. Go to them with really pertinent questions that can help improve your business. And the last one, which I've actually only really realized in the last couple of several forms of communication for that time. It doesn't need to be a phone conversation. One of my board of advisors genuinely likes to have quick fire questions on WhatsApp. He feels that if there's a serious question that needs to be answered, drop him on WhatsApp, he'll get back to me. Another one prefers on Facebook. If he has time, he'll respond to what it is that he's doing. Some of the others prefer just to have casual coffees once in a while to keep things regular and updated on what it is that they're doing. So you work to what it is that your advisor feels best with regards to your one-on-one interactions, but get them to commit to the group conversations so that you can get the biggest value out of the proposition. With that, I'm going to stop to see if there's any specific questions that anyone has, or if anyone from the team has anything that they would like to ask.
Hey, thank you so much. We actually do have some questions from the web and from the team. So I'm going to shoot a few at you. You mentioned that there should only be 4 to 5 advisors on each board max. What professional backgrounds do you recommend these advisory board members comprise of when selecting them for your organization?
And it goes back to the point I was making with regards to the weakest links. It really depends on your business, but it's something that you may have a founding team of 1 or 2 people. Really identify what are the weakest links that you have that they can help grow you. For instance, if you have a creative IT background and somebody's in business analysis, but you have no expertise in marketing or no expertise in legal, it wouldn't be a bad idea to potentially find a lawyer that you can trust that may use his time to draft contracts that otherwise would be quite expensive, but also give you a legal opinion for a strategic perspective. If you're trying to grow an online business and you need marketing support, but you have no marketing expertise, find somebody that can help you with a marketing perspective. If you're not so strong on an e-commerce platform from a product perspective, maybe there's an expert in an existing business that can help you from a product perspective. So I think my point is there's no specific definition, but if you were to look at a business and say that you've got the kind of CEO, CFO, COO, business development, IT, etc., but when you start a startup, you may only have 3 positions at max, then identify what the weak links are and try and see if you can bring people to help support you. But at the same time, I don't want to say that you shouldn't have people that are in your strengths, but if they are in strengths, make sure that they're industry experts. If you're a florist company, then find who the biggest seller of floral flowers are in your company, in your region, or your company that's an expert at, and get them to make introductions. If you're in fashion, then find a fashion expert that can make those introductions. So if it's something within your domain, really find somebody who's going to help you with introductions. But if it's not within your domain, find other people that can help strengthen your weak points.
Great, thank you. A few more questions here. When you talk about providing your board of advisors with equity, is this usually only financial equity, or could it be other types?
I'm not sure what other types of equity there may be. If the question is, do you pay them a fee versus equity, I always suggest that you shouldn't give fees to board of advisors. That is a consultancy piece. That's for a distinct amount of work. Usually it's for a deliverable. And the reason is because it's very expensive to pay for someone's time. It's actually quite cheap to give equity, but if you're giving them equity, they've got skin in your business. So it's something that you want continuous support for, and someone that can actually come and provide you help on a continual basis. If it's just somebody to say, I need to do a pitch deck, can you help with your pitch deck? There's really no point in giving them 0.5% equity for 2 years if their deliverable is done in a month. And you shouldn't be giving them equity just to get a deliverable done. That it's much easier to give someone a certain amount of money that you agree upon for a set deliverable than equity. In terms of other types of equity, if the person can refine what the other choices of equity are, I'll be happy to answer that. But if the question is monetary versus equity, monetary fixed deliverable consultant, advisor, equity, long-term buy-in into the proposition. And another point that's important for when people understand equity, when you're going to fundraise, there are no better advocates. They may not have introductions, but there are no better advocates than people that have spent maybe 6-7 months really understanding what it is that you're doing with your business and your strengths are. That person will understand you as a team, your team dynamics, and your business proposition when they're recommending you to others. Versus a cold introduction. One of the things I remember one of my board of advisors says was, when you're looking for investment, you ask for advice. But when you've got advice, you then seek investment. Because these people have buy-in and they've already sort of helped you with what it is that you're doing. And there's no better people that may either be investors themselves or investors that can help you than your board of advisors.
Great. When you were discussing setting up a dashboard for board of advisor meetings, you also discussed setting KPIs. Can you define what some of these KPIs are, what some of the best ones are?
It kind of depends on your business, but in my case, number one, you don't want to have too many of them. Number two, they're ones that you can quite clearly define and track. And number three, ones that you look to grow as a business. So how do you mine? Number one, it's the number of users to the site. It's the number of startups that are listed on the site. It's the number of startups that are actually owned by users on the site. It's the amount of revenue that you're looking to generate month on month. For me, it's the number of clients that we've converted into corporate clients. Again, you don't want a huge number of KPIs because, again, it's just to try and show the growth of your business and agree them with your advisors. That's not a bad idea. You say, do you believe the following are the things that you're most interested in learning about my business, that we can track month to month to say you've done this month and you haven't done well that month. But again, you don't want a laundry list of 100. I would say you should have no more than 10, but maybe 5 or 6 that are very clear for your business. And again, this is your board of advisors. It's not your management team. This is not your internal KPIs for whether one person is working better than the other. This is just a sanity check for your advisors to know whether you're going into the right direction. So those are the, for instance, exactly mine are number of site visits, number of users, number of registered users, revenue month on month, and number of converted clients a month.
Great.
And I do it on a very simple. I do it on a very simple PowerPoint slide. Every month, I just add another column, and I do the percentage growth month on month, so that they can see the evolution of it over a 12-month period.
Yeah, that's definitely a great way to demonstrate success, is to be able to see it numerically. I have a question for you. Can you tell us a little bit more about MAGNiTT and what the organization comprises of? Great.
So, I mean, right now, like I mentioned, I was actually going to do a quick share screen because I don't know how many people are familiar with MAGNiTT itself. I mean, we say on our first side page that we're the gateway to the MENA startup ecosystem. One of the things I identified and noticed is that currently there's a lack of transparency as to what's really going on in this space. And the way that we comprise it is that you guys, the startups, are the real core of the proposition. I'm continually trying to find ways to help you as startups and startup founders connect to the different stakeholders that I highlighted earlier on my slide. But to be able to do that, I also need to bring them to the platform, and they're all interested in what you're doing. So they continually see each of your profiles MAGNiTT, which I can show afterwards. And on MAGNiTT, there's basically a directory. We now have 2,500 plus startups on the platform. Our aim officially is to grow to 5,000 by the end of this year. And we started at literally 100 at January 2016, and we're now 2,500. There's two ways. Here you have a whole host of different fields for all of the startup platform, and that's what we're covering other startups in your industry. One thing that I would love to see more of that doesn't happen is interactions between startups. Are you a payment gateway startup in fintech and looking for other payment gateways to connect with? Are you interested in logistics? Well, there's Kareem here. How do we connect with Kareem? Here you have two logistics companies in exactly the same location. Is there a way of providing synergies? We also created what I like to say is the standardized process, which is just easier. Here you have all of a snapshot of all of the information that you need to basically work out whether you want to follow and connect with the founder of a startup on the platform. But what's in it for you as startups? We now have 378 different institutions, which is what we call ecosystem players, whether they be VCs, co-working spaces, incubators, accelerators, all listed so that you can connect with them on the platform. And there's actually 23 regional VCs or angel groups that have accepted you to apply to them directly on the platform using MAGNiTT profile. Likes of Bico Capital, Arzan Capital, Dash Ventures, Iliad Partners, MEVP, Oasis, and the list goes on. If you go to any of these guys' pages, right now, it's very simple. It's one of the propositions that we really want to build out. But you're able to apply to all the guys from Bico Capital by simply putting in your full profile on MAGNiTT. An email, and you're able to start a conversation with them. The second thing what we've realized in the region is extremely difficult is talent. Although there are many different ways to do talent, LinkedIn, Bait, etc., nobody was focusing on just startups. So we said, how can we aggregate all of the different startup propositions? This is not only interesting for you as startups, because it's at the moment completely free for you to list this, but there's a whole community of people, whether they're consultants to students looking to get into different startup propositions that they're unaware of, and this allows them to come and apply to you directly on the platform and connect with the founder who's listed the job. What we've tried to do is make it very simple, because you can then track exactly on the platform all the people that have applied to you and then accept their applications directly on the platform. And this is something that's extremely simple to using the MAGNiTT platform. Another area that we've seen that is extremely important is how can you get curated and vetted services that can help grow your business. This is something that, especially in Dubai, how do you find a good lawyer? How can you find a good co-working space? All of these startups have MAGNiTT offers that you can benefit from on the platform just by connecting directly with the company. And on each page, they'll highlight exactly what the offer is, and you'll be able to claim the offer on the platform. Another thing that I just want to highlight is that we're trying to really raise awareness around information. We have our new funding tracker. We did the funding report in 2016. And here you can see every time anybody has been listed as funded, we list them on the platform month on month, and we link them to their profile page. So one of the things that you can actually do now is list all of the previous funding that you have as a startup. That gets visibility to the ecosystem. That means investors will come and find out what it is that you're doing, and there you can find all of the information. So if we take, for instance, Kareem, if you're Kareem, you can go and find all of the different ways that they've been funded well, I need to sign in again to be able to do that. You see the different ways that they have been funded on the platform. And the last thing that I'd love to get anybody's feedback on is transparency. We've seen a lot of people want to get responses from people in the ecosystem. And next week, and you're all welcome to try this out and send me any feedback, we're launching Ask MAGNiTT. Here we're going to have all of the different sections that are useful and important for you as startups, and you'll be welcome to share any question that you have. So Ask an Investor aims to ask any investor a question that you have. So ironically, we did a couple of these through social media, and through the platform we were able to get response, and our aim is to get your responses for each of these questions from industry experts. So there was a question, and I love it: do VCs really have a clue as to what they're investing in, or are they just lemmings? And then one by one we got MENA, we got Turn8, we got Bico Capital, we got 500 startups, and our aim is every time you ask a question on the platform, we'll get you a response from an industry expert, or we'll try to get you a response from an industry expert that can answer that question. And that can be around advisory boards, events, if you just want to shout out who's going to events, or you just want to introduce yourself to the community. This aims to be interactive for you to be able to connect with the different ecosystem players. So our goal is to really, going back to the first slide that I said, is to really help with the isolation of founders here in the region, either connect to industry people, whether they be corporates, whether they be investors, or just connect with one another. You can actually connect with a whole bunch of people. One of the things people says is, how do I find angel investors? You can filter by angel investors on the MAGNiTT platform and connect directly with all of those angel investors through the platform to introduce yourself. So our aim is to really help with that and connect you to the people in the ecosystem.
Great. Thank you so much for giving the background on MAGNiTT. I think those are some great platforms that you have set up and resources that startup founders can utilize. We actually received an additional question from YouTube, and I think you touched on it a little bit. But the follower of the webinar would like to know if there's any guidance on how much equity you should be giving your advisors, vested over how long, and should there be any predefined deliverables or milestones set for these advisors?
Yeah, I mean, so it really depends on who you are speaking to and what your willingness to give is. Like I mentioned earlier, the range I recommend that you can get from the sites that I'll share with you is 0.5% equity to 1% equity. It really depends on how much time you need from them, how senior they are, what the time commitment that you're looking for. But it's around 0.5 to 1%. Anything more, and number one, if people are asking you for more, then the wrong type of people that you should be dealing with. You shouldn't be dishing out 5% equity to individual people. That's very dangerous. It looks very bad on your table. People will question as to why you've done that. So the idea, they're not your team. If you were going to give 5% equity, they should be joining your team as a full-time employee. There's somebody that is part of the management team. If it's just an advisor that you're giving time to, you give them in the scale of 0.5 to 1%. And what I would say, you vest that over a two-year period. Why 2 years? Because within 2 years, you should be looking to fundraise into your seed round. At that point, you're more than likely to be getting a board of directors. So at that point, you'll be giving additional equity to those people that actually will be running your business or helping you run your business. There's nothing wrong with having side agreements with additional board of advisors, but they then become more like advisors than a board of advisors. They're people that you may just call up to say, I really need help with X, Y, and Z. What I'm trying to advocate for is, for an early stage startup, you're replacing the need for a board of advisors with a board of directors with a board of advisors that can really help grow and support your business. So to the question, I would say 0.5% to 1% equity. I would say that it's good over 2 years. either with a after 6 months and 12 months and then invested monthly after that, or you depends on the individuals that you're speaking to. And I would recommend, if for instance you're giving 0.5% equity, it would be a 1 hour collective call every month and 2 hours individually, either for the purposes of a one-on-one or to take them to a meeting that they may help you with for business development or for an interview or for a different purpose for what it is that you're doing. But ultimately, 0.5% for 3 hours a month, and then you can scale it upwards depending on how much equity you're looking to give. And I think I mentioned it on one of the slides, and this was a huge recommendation from all of my advisors. You need to give the same amount of equity to all of them. Don't start making life complicated by giving one person 0.75, the other person 0.5, the one person 1%, because at some point they're all going to say, well, I gave you more time, they gave you less time, their time may not have been as useful. Agree the same terms and conditions with all of them, and don't have any qualms in saying you are not meeting the deliverables that we agreed to. And to the point on deliverables, the time is the deliverable. It is very hard to map out over 2 years what your fixed deliverables are going to be in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, or 24 months' time. But one thing you're sure of is a time commitment based on your needs and requirements. There's a very clear deliverable to say, this month you didn't do this, that month you did. But again, don't be stringent. If 1 month they're busy or 1 month it's the summer, allow some leeway. Maybe go back to them in 2 months or 3 months. But if you haven't spoken to somebody in 3 months and they've given you no value add and they haven't replied to a single email, that's the point where you turn around and say, I'm sorry, this isn't working.
Great. Thank you so much for that. I guess before we wrap up, I wanted to open it up to see if there's anything else you'd like to discuss with our followers and our viewers.
No, not at all. Just if people have any questions specifically, either around MAGNiTT or about advisory boards, what their biggest pain points are with the region. I mean, I love the work that TechWadi is doing. I'd love to see what best practice is in Silicon Valley. I mean, one of the things that's quite funny is that when I speak to Sharif, who's on my board and from TechWadi, the approach of startups and the approach of the structure in Silicon Valley is very different to what's done here in the region. It's very uncommon to have these kind of board of advisors here in the region. Number one, people don't like giving up equity. Number two, people don't like being held accountable, and people just going for coffee chats. There, it's very normal to have these structures in place. And I think some of the websites that you can find, whether it's Y Combinator, whether I have the links there, you'll just see that there are very standard templates that will be looking to just sign. I'm working with a legal company that is out to promote standardized documentation here in the region. When they do that, we'll be looking to promote those. And one of the most simple ones is either a co-founder agreement, which really is very simple to do. We agreed what those deliverables are, pretty much the same as advisory agreement, but from a co-founder perspective, and an advisory agreement. These shouldn't be things that you should be spending huge amounts of money on lawyers on to get done. But the value that they will provide and bring is huge to the growth of your business.
Great. Thank you once again. There are no more questions from the web or from YouTube. I just wanted to thank you so much for joining us. This was a great conversation. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. If you need any help or if anybody needs help registering to MAGNiTT or using MAGNiTT, then let me know.
Okay. We'll send out a link to all of our followers as well.
Please do. That would be great.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.